Welcome to 5 Books for Catholics, where an expert selects and explains 5 outstanding books on some aspect of Catholic life, doctrine, or culture. St. Thomas More, 1478 to 1535, was a leading humanist, English statesman, and ended his earthly pilgrimage as a martyr. The son of a judge, More received an excellent classical education before becoming a lawyer. After a period of vocational discernment, he decided to remain a layman rather than become a Carthusian. He married twice and had 4 children with his first wife. Elected to Parliament in 1504, he rose through a series of public offices until succeeding Cardinal Wolsey as Lord Chancellor. He was esteemed by leading humanists of the age such as Erasmus and Luis Juan Vives. He also engaged in theological debates with Martin Luther and took action to quell the nascent spread of Protestantism in England. However, he fell out of favour when he refused to recognise the validity of Henry VIII's marriage to Anne Boleyn and the king's claim to be the head of the Church in England. Finally, after various attempts, a trial found him guilty of treason, and he was executed, refusing up to the end to renounce his Catholic faith. He was beatified in 1886 and canonized along with St. John Fisher in 1935. The memory of the 2 saints is celebrated on the 22nd of June, and in 2000, St. John Paul II named Thomas More patron saint of statesmen and politicians. In this interview, Frank Mitjans will take us through his pick of St. Thomas More's writings and studies on him. Frank Mitjans is an architect who has worked in London since 1976 and has long been interested in St. Thomas More. Since August 2002, he has given many presentations and talks on the topography of More's London to groups of students and other interested people in Britain, Ireland, and Sweden. He has published various papers in St. Thomas More, and more recently the book Thomas More's Vocation, published by Catholic University of America Press. Frank, welcome.
Welcome, Father Dominic.
You've mentioned that a visit to an exhibition on Thomas More at the National Gallery started your interest in him. Why did it spark your interest in him, and how did that interest develop?
Well, that exhibition, I was invited to attend that exhibition by an author, Andrés Pazquete Prada, who had written a book, a biography of Thomas More in 1962. So he was very keen on Thomas More already, and so he invited me to the exhibition, and I found the exhibition very interesting. So that's that, yeah.
And that got you interested in researching on St. Thomas More and writing on him? Well,
up to a point. Much later, I met Jerry Wergama of Dallas University, and he is the one that we discussed many things of Thomas More, and he is the one that encouraged me to be interested, and I attended 2 conferences in Dallas, and then I somehow just a bracket. You mentioned, Father Dominic, that Thomas More thought of being a Carthusian. Well, this is something that we don't have any record that anybody said that he was thinking of being a Carthusian. He was living near the London Charterhouse, and he participated in some of the practices of piety with the Carthusian, and he somehow built up an ascetical life. But nevertheless, of being a Carthusian is not something that he said, or something that Erasmus or his son-in-law William Roper or any of the biographers said. It's something that modern authors somehow conclude by the fact of being near the Charterhouse. But this is another matter, not necessarily related to thinking of being a Carthusian.
And are there any other aspects of his biography you'd like to stress that haven't been mentioned already?
Yeah, I think that in my book, Thomas More's Vocation, let me see. There is an issue here, which of course we know that Thomas More is a saint because the church has canonized him, and the church canonized him because it is obvious that he was a martyr. However, the point is not that he was a saint because he was a martyr, is that he received the grace of martyrdom because all his life tried to respond to God's call. And therefore, in the book that I wrote about Thomas More's vocation, I tried to focus on his early writings, his early choices. And we see that when he was quite young, he was writing poetry, and he put somehow God in the first place. There is this early poem that the Mitjans of life, which he's writing in English, and yet at the end he writes the last stanza in Latin, and he states that the love of God is the greatest thing, that somehow. So we see his interior life, his spiritual life, from very much from the beginning, from his upright upbringing. But and of course, in fact, these early poems are prior to living near the Charter House, for instance.
But St. Thomas More is just one of many of the Church's saints. Why is he worth reading today? How is this 16th century humanist and statesman relevant for us today?
Absolutely. So there are many saints, of course. However, and I think that we can learn from all the saints. However, he was a man that at some stage was very much in a position, a prominent position, and he was at some stage the Lord Chancellor, which is the highest minister of the king at the time, and confronted with serving the king and keeping his own position, he decided to side with the demands of his conscience. Now, I think it's important to speak about conscience. The demands of the conscience is not what he thought. The conscience is his willingness to do always the will of God. But Henry VIII was very adamant that he wanted to divorce his wife. He sought an annulment. The annulment was not granted. In all this process, Thomas More was very clear of the validity of the marriage between Henry and Elizabeth, and the marriage between Henry and Catherine, and therefore, well, he could not in any way agree with what Henry was trying to do, and this not just somehow giving his opinion, but this meant the fact that he gave his life for the validity of the marriage and for the unity of the Catholic Church. Henry, the only way that Henry thought of obtaining the marriage when the annulment was not granted by the Pope was to make himself the head of the Church, and this everybody else, all the bishops in Parliament except John Henry, went along with what the king was aiming. And John Fisher and Thomas More refused to go along with that and gave priority to be faithful to God.
On a less scholarly note, many know St. Thomas More from popular media. On the one hand, Robert Bolt's play A Man for All Seasons, adapted into an Oscar-winning film by Fred Zinnemann, presents Moore as a man of integrity and a martyr of conscience. On the other hand, Hilary Mantel's Wolf Hall trilogy, later made into a TV series, presents him as a rigid authoritarian hell-bent on torturing Protestants. Which of the two literary presentations is the more accurate?
Well, Mantel got a prize for fiction, and that's fine. I mean, she writes well, and she wrote fiction, so that's fine. No? So one thing is fiction. The other is a play. A play that, of course, plays always are portray a specific sense. There is a play. A play has to have this unity of timing, unity of scene, of place, and therefore the artist is not writing history either. So one thing is fiction, the other thing is a play. But that play, I think, it is the accurate, and it gives an accurate character of Thomas More, even though there are many aspects of the play that we can discuss and they are not historical. I think that the best way of having a vision of Hilary Mantel is to go to the website of Professor Richard Rex, Professor of Reformation History in Cambridge University. Richard Rex emphasized this point that Hilary Mantel writes fiction, but also a fiction that in no way is accurate. Richard Rex somehow says that Hilary Mantel transfer the virtues and the good humor of Rex to Thomas Cromwell, and the defects of Thomas Cromwell into Thomas More. So she somehow changed the characters of one and the other. Okay, yeah, I mean.
But even though she writes fiction, should we let her off the hook so easily? Because she's writing historical fiction, and she's trying to shape the public's perception of historical figures, perhaps not in the most honest of ways.
Okay. So anyhow, one can write historical novels. Benson wrote historical novels, but both historical novels and plays somehow have to convey the truth, and have to play properly the character of the person, and this is not the case in any way of Hilary Mantel. Yeah, so she takes a position of denigrating Thomas More, and I don't think that there is in any way a way of defending her work. Okay, she says that she has done a lot of research, yeah, but that doesn't imply that what she portrays it's in any way accurate.
In the motu proprio, in which he declared St. Thomas More patron of statesmen and politicians, St. John Paul II noted nonetheless that, and here I quote him, in his actions against heretics, he reflected the limits of the culture of his time. Did Thomas More adopt reprehensible means against early English Protestants?
Sorry?
Did he adopt reprehensible means against early English Protestants? Okay,
so let's see. So in England, in 1401, a parliament passed a bill in which the heretics were meant to be somehow stopped and judged, and then were have to be punished. And the bill established that the burning of heretics. Okay. So this is not an invention of Thomas More, and this is a bill of parliament, the English Parliament, in 1401. Okay, was mainly because or against the law. Okay. Now, when taking any public office, the civil servants had to agree to this bill of parliament, and therefore to oppose the expansion of heretics. Okay, so this is something that Thomas More had to somehow take the I don't know whether it was an oath itself, okay, of not just when he became Lord Chancellor, but even before. Okay, so I think this whole issue is very well explained once again by Richard Rex in the Cambridge Companion of Thomas More, which is published, I think, in 2011, perhaps. And there is a chapter by Richard Rex on whether was he a fanatic persecuting heretics or a statesman. And Richard Rex explains very well the issues. Okay. Now, then, the situation is that from January 1518, Lutheran books start coming into England, and Henry VIII, well, the first information that we have is that Erasmus writes to Thomas More about these Lutheran books. Henry VIII takes some interest, but as soon as Luther writes in a way, the captivity of Babylon, in a way that it is clearly subversive, that Henry VIII considers that is going to cause a rebellion against the civil authority. Henry VIII takes the position of trying to stop the Lutheran influence in England. And for that, he appoints Thomas More as one of the persons to try to oppose that. Okay. Okay, so the things develop, and at some stage, the Bishop of London asked Thomas More to write against the heretics, and this is the first dialogue that Thomas More writes in 1529, and then also once he's made the Lord Chancellor, this bill of parliament that I mentioned means that the civil authority has to identify those people who are somehow disrupting the peace of the country. And they have to somehow bring them to justice. By bringing the justice, this implies that first the civil authority is the one that persecutes the heretics, and then they put them to the court of the bishops, because of course it is the bishop, the bishop court, the one that has to declare whether someone is a heretic or not. And once declared heretic, once again is given to the civil arm to impose the punishment that, according to that act of parliament, is and can be even the burning of. Okay. Now, then there are many cases. In fact, those people who I have not studied the things in detail, but those things that people who during the time that Thomas More was the Lord Chancellor, 6 people were executed, and 3 of them, Thomas More was much more implicated in all the seeking the heritage, the witnesses, the testimonies, etc., to follow the things more closely. Okay, so that's the situation.
Your first recommended book is a short biography written by Reformation historian Father James McConaughey. Why does it top your list?
Well, I think that, you see, often books, biographies portray the vision of the author. It is very difficult to give the reality of a person. Okay, and I think that James McConaughey gives a very accurate view of Thomas More. It is a very short book, just 64 pages. I think that has a very good understanding of Thomas More as a very good friend of his friends, a humanist with the clear idea of service to society. When we speak of humanists nowadays, they mean something different, but the humanists of the 16th century were Christian humanists. They saw their study of sacred scriptures in the original Greek. They saw the study of the fathers of the church, Latin, classical Latin, classical Greek, as a way of contributing to the evangelization of society. Also aware that at the time there was a certain decadence in Christianity, and somehow they try to improve the understanding of Christianity by going to the sources and by by fostering the study of the classics. So this is the Christian humanism of the 16th century. What they tried somehow was stopped by the reformers, and this is a great pity because the Christian humanists did try to reform the church within the church, while the reformers somehow didn't. Anyhow, James McConaughey understands that Thomas More understood marriage as a vocation to holiness. He explains very clearly how he also understood that his contribution towards serving the king was a contribution for the common good, not seeking himself. And he saw very clearly that that he had to defend the validity of the marriage between Henry and Catherine. All this, I think that James McConaughey put forward very briefly and very, so it reads very well. And I think that that's your listeners cannot see that, but it's a very small book, and I think it's very recommendable.
Next is Jared Wegemer's Thomas More, A Portrait of Courage. As the subtitle suggests, this biography focuses on his struggles to be a man of courage. What are its main lessons in this regard?
Yeah, okay, so Jerry Wegemer starts considering what Thomas More wrote in translating the life of Pico. In that translation, Thomas More added the properties of a lover and of a lover of God, and also added the 12 characteristics of a spiritual structure. And Jerry Wegemer considers that all his life Thomas More tried to grow in spiritual virtues, and also not only in the spiritual virtues, but also perhaps even more in his more recent books by Wegemer. He emphasized also the classical virtues that one finds in the Greek and in Cicero and so in the classics. Okay, and Wegemer considers that this helped him to build his character and confront the difficulties that he had. Yeah.
Thank you for listening. To read or listen to the rest of this interview and gain full access to our archive, visit 5booksforcatholics.com and become a premium subscriber. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast and give it a top rating on the platform of your choice. That way, more people can discover it. You can also support the podcast and help us produce more interviews like this one by making a one-off donation via the link given in the show notes. As little as $1, £1, or €1 can help and will be greatly appreciated. Thank you once again, and God bless.